Alright, you lot, I want to try, I've got a bit of a dirty lens, bloody hell. I want to try and explain again why you should warm up your engine. I did a video on it, I think I've done a couple of videos on it. Warming up engines, you know, any engine, before you actually use them, put them into operation. But there's been a couple of comments, and there's one comment a while back, I made a small video on it. One of you crazy Americans seems to have misunderstood my point completely. So let's try and see if we can recap it again and try and clear up a few things that may be misinterpreted in that video. Now, I dare say some of you are going to say they're not the same, but they are. I'm going to use this little nitro engine as an example because I've got it open at the moment and we can see. But these obviously have a sleeve. Now, you can see the piston going up and down. There's the piston. This is obviously a two-stroke nitro engine. The piston goes up and down like that. Now, regardless of whether we're talking about great big engines in boats or aeroplane engines or truck engines or car engines or any engine for that matter, it's all the same principle. It's metal. It doesn't matter what type of metal. Well, it does. They react differently, but for speaking broadly. Now, the main reason you need to warm up your engine, forgive me if I explain it in a bit of a strange way, because I think a lot of the things I say do get misinterpreted. The main reason is for bearings and the way that it all expands in the engine, right? Your piston will expand, your cylinder and sleeve will expand, bearings need to get warm, oil needs to get flowing. When oil is cold, it's thicker, so it doesn't get pumped around quite as fast, or quite as well. The viscosity gets a bit thicker. Now let's have a look in here. For those of you that don't know, let's have a look, see what we've got up here. Look. This is a motorbike piston, just in case you didn't know what an actual piston itself looks like. We can see the top of it in now. This is an actual piston. Look relatively the same. You can get 2 rings, 1 ring, well, I didn't even get 3, probably can. Yeah, you can get 3 rings. 4 rings, you can get, I don't know, you can get all different types of pistons. But they all look relatively the same. This was in a motorbike that blew up, so ignore the big gouge out the side of it, because it shouldn't have that big gouge. It should be nice and shiny and, you know, intact. But anyway, that's what a piston looks like. Now, when you start up your engine, that's obviously going to be going up and down. Depending on what engine, it's going to be going up and down at, say, 500 if it's on tick over, 500, 700, 800, maybe even 1,000 RPM. A lot of engines will run a bit faster, especially fuel-injected ones, will run a little bit faster when they're cold. So about 1,200 RPM probably, maybe more, I don't know. So that's going to be going up and down really quick. Now, you want to try and keep it relatively low revs so that the piston will expand at the same rate as your sleeve or cylinder is going to expand. Because it goes without saying, they're in there very tightly with a small tolerance. At least they should be, unless your engine's quite worn out. But assuming it's not. So if the piston expands quicker than the sleeve or cylinder, then it's obviously going to get jammed in there. Or at the very least, it's going to do a bit of scoring. So that can occur when you start your engine up and rev it up fast. Say if you start it up in your car and you shot down the road, just drove normally down the road. It's called a cold seize, when the piston will get hotter than the cylinder quicker and will expand quicker and jam up in there. You know, if you've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or even 10 cylinders, well, not many cars have 10, but you know, you may not get an actual seize if only one cylinder starts to seize up. The other ones will probably push it round and just cause a load of damage. But you could snap a rod, you could throw a bearing, spin a bearing. You could do all kinds of damage. Things need to warm up. The way I like to think of it is, and I think, well, I've been told that my way of thinking is a bit strange, but there we go. Most people, just imagine this, right? You're asleep. You're asleep, it's night time, you're asleep. Now, imagine if you're woken up. Someone comes running into your bedroom with a great big saucepan and a spoon, banging on it, and then goes, "Get up!" Maybe those, if some of you have been in the army, I dare say you'll know what it's like. I've not been in the army, but I've been woken up and had to run. You're a bit like, whoa. So imagine that, you're fast asleep dreaming, about sheep and cows or whatever you dream about, and then you get woken up quick and you've just got to go. There's someone going, come on, get up, go, go, go. You can't think, you can't spend 5 minutes waking up, you've got to go. Your muscles, all your muscles are going to be pretty stiff. Your brain ain't going to be thinking. Your muscles are going to be pretty stiff. That's what we're really thinking about. Muscles are going to be stiff. Everything's just going to be, it's all going to be cold. Not going to be warmed up, are you? And you're going for a run. Runners, human runners, obviously have to warm up. Otherwise, they risk pulling their muscles, right? I know you're thinking, where are you going? Where are you going? But this is the way I like to think about it. Everything's the same. So, you know, athletes have to warm up, whether they're swimmers, tennis players, footballers, you know, cross-country runners, hurdlers, high jumpers, any sport, anything, really. Even before you just go to the gym, you've got to do a few stretches, haven't you, before you pull a muscle. So, an engine is pretty much the same kind of concept. If you don't warm the engine up, it can do the equivalent of pulling a muscle, which is spinning a bearing, or having a bit of oil starvation. I can't really think. I suppose blood would be the equivalent of oil, but I suppose it needs to get pumping round. It needs to get pumping round so you don't get out of breath. Perhaps that could be the oil. You know, it's got to get warm and start pumping. With a human body, once you're warmed up, providing you're fit, obviously, if you're fit enough and you do it regularly, once you're warmed up, your blood's pumping around, all your muscles are warm, you can just go and do whatever you're doing, whether it's running or swimming, you just keep going, don't you? Yeah, same with an engine. Once the engine is warmed up and the oil is flowing, the oil is warm, all the bearings, pistons, everything's warm, it just keep going and going and going without issue. That's the way I like to think of it, and I hope that's got the sort of the way, you know, the reasoning across. There was something that I said in my other video, which that bloke, what was it, Gasoline Vapor Systems, I think his name was, he seems to have misinterpreted, and that was when I was talking about carburetors. Now, I haven't got an actual full-sized carburetor to show you, but this is a little mini carburetor on this little nitro engine here. It's probably not going to focus on it, it's too much light. There's a little mini carburetor there with a blue air filter attached to it. It's very hairy because it's been in a storage box and there must be some kind of hairs in there. But that's a mini carburetor. Now, for those of you that are too young, perhaps, to have ever been around one, cars back in, I say the olden days, like probably up until the mid-90s, they stopped them, put fuel injection probably, I don't know. If you've got a carburetor, you need to put the choke on to richen the mixture, blah blah blah. Now, I said in that other video that you couldn't drive the car, so we're just talking about a car now, you couldn't drive the car until you warmed it up because the carburetor wouldn't let you. Now, I didn't mean that's the reason. I meant it physically wouldn't let you. With a car with a petrol engine that's carbureted, get me words mixed up now. With a petrol engine, even the older diesels, when you had the old manual pumps, they were a bit temperamental. You had to let them warm up. But because the fuel mixture weren't quite right, it was too rich, you know, a cold engine needs a richer fuel mixture in order to run properly, and as it warms up you can go a bit leaner until it's optimum mixture. I said that that you needed to let the car warm up in order to drive it because the carburetor wouldn't let you. Well, what would happen was, if the engine was cold and you had a carburetor and you tried to drive or you tried to rev it, it usually wouldn't. It would usually bog, cough and splutter. It might even just die completely. So I didn't mean that the carburetor was the reason. Obviously the reason you want the engine to warm up is because of your pistons, your bearings, your oil and all that. The carburetor itself, physically, a lot of the time, I mean, I had that 106, that Peugeot 106, I think there's some videos of it on my channel way far down, back in 2007 or so. No, 2010, 2009. That had a carburetor on it. And that was a very temperamental engine. Oh, that was a really temperamental engine, that was. You know, you literally had to put the choke on and let it warm up for about 5 minutes before it would run. It probably weren't jetted right, and I don't want an argument whether it was or it wasn't, but all engines are different. But all I was trying to say was, back in them days, you had to sort of warm the engine up, give yourself time to go out there, start your car up and let it warm up before you could drive it. Not the fact that you wanted to let it warm up for health reasons for the engine, but it's a lot of time you couldn't. And I know a lot of you Americans, you still have your old cars with your carburetors, your V8s and all that, with your carburetors on. You probably know what I'm talking about. You physically, I know some people are going to go, well, I can, my car's carbureted and it starts straight up and drives. Well, brilliant. But a lot of the time, they wouldn't. Yeah, so you had to let it warm up. You didn't have a choice. You couldn't go driving down the road because you'd change gear and it would cut out, or it wouldn't have any power. It's just the way that it was. That's what I was trying to say. With the old diesels, they were the same. So the reason you want to let your car warm up is because of the bearings and oil and all that kind of stuff. But back with the carbureted car, sometimes you didn't have a choice. Even if you was in a massive rush and you was late for work and you got out there and you just wanted to go, sometimes it wouldn't let you. It just keeps stalling and cutting out because it was cold. You just had to sit there and let it warm up. Nowadays, when you got fuel injection, your computer in your car, whether it's diesel or petrol, it will be measuring. It'll have a mass air, probably have a mass airflow sensor. I don't know whether they've staged them out now, probably have, I don't know, but they have sensors somewhere measuring the temperature of the engine block, the temperature of the exhaust gases coming out, the temperature of the air going in to the intake, the temperature of the fuel, diesel and petrol, measuring all kinds of aspects of what the engine is doing and how it's feeling, and it will adjust the fuel mixture in order to make that engine run as best as it can do. So in theory, and I think it works pretty well, it's bad for the engine as far as bearings go and pistons and oil, but because people are so impatient these days and they want to be able to just get in their car and drive, they don't care about the internal damage that could be happening, you know, they just don't. So the car manufacturers make them so that the computers will adjust it and they'll make it run. So people get the impression that they don't have to let them warm up. There will be old people out there, and I don't mean to be rude, but there will be old people out there that grew up with cars that had manual diesel pumps, so needed to be warmed up. Diesels were quite bad back then. Well, not bad, they weren't bad, I'll just say they're a bit more temperamental. And they grew up with like Ford Fiestas and things and other cars with carburetors, and they let them warm up. And now they've got these cars, these newer ones, they can just start up and drive. Just because you can start it up and drive don't mean it's instantly ready to go. It just means that they've made it so that it will put the right amount of fuel in to make it run the best it can while that engine is cold. It doesn't mean that you can start it up and go full throttle down the road, because the elimination of all the damage that could be happening inside isn't there. It could still be doing damage, and people are going to argue. There'll always be arguments. Well, the oil was evolved. The oil was much better than it used to be. The oil nowadays will protect the engine no matter what. It probably has evolved, and I dare say it has evolved. But that doesn't mean that it's, you know, I still wouldn't trust it. You still need to warm. Give your engine a bit of time, at least 2 minutes, 1 to 2 minutes. You know, there's no need to be in that much of a rush that you can't wait a minute or 2 minutes, you know, for the sake of your engine in your car. But some people just don't care. I'm afraid that's the society that we live in these days. People just don't care, I'm afraid. Yeah, they just don't care. Even though they've paid their 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, £100,000 or dollars or euros for their car. They just expect it to be, I can't click my fingers, but they just expect it to be like that, get in it and go. You know, that's what they want. If you made a car that cost 60 grand and you went to that customer, right, yeah, just remember every time you get in it, the engine's cold, sit there for 2 minutes, just let it warm up. They won't be happy, and they probably won't buy it, to be honest, because people, either that or they won't do it. I think they should put timers on them. They should have an emergency button in case you're in an emergency and you've got to press that and you've got to go. But then people would just abuse that emergency button, I suppose, wouldn't they? It's mad. Anyway, I'm sorry if I rambled on. I'm a very opinionated person, and I could go on about a subject for a long time, especially if I know I'm right. I know I am right. So, but I hope that did help you out. If you got confused or you want some more information on this subject or any other subject to do with an engine, just put a comment in the comments box and I'll read it. I'll leave a comment back, or I might make a video on it depending on what your question is or whatever. If I've missed something out, put it in the comments. I'm all for being corrected if I'm wrong, but I know I'm not wrong with a lot of it. So You know, I've been messing around with engines for a long time, so I hope that's helped a lot of you that don't know. Yeah, it is. It's just sad that people are too impatient to wait these days, and a lot of engines get ruined. I mean, turbos is another one to go on to. I won't go. I'll do a separate video on turbos. Why you should let turbos warm up. Why you should let them cool down after you've used them. Because a lot of people don't. No one ever does. And all that. That's a different story though. There's loads of things. People just think that you can get in a car and drive off and go, and everything's hunky dory. But you don't realise what goes on under the bonnet. Things you need to look after. Things you need to think about. But there we go. You always hear it when it's really cold outside, frosty, maybe -5. Someone gets in the car, down the road. Nasty. I'll see you in the next one, people. Have a good day.